You know that M3 chip from Apple that's apparently supposed to come at WWDC in June? Well, no. It looks like that's not happening. Mark Gurman just came out with a massive bombshell leak that completely flips the script on other leaks, but there's also the little chance that the M3 chip might not turn out as exciting as we thought, according to an interesting idea from 9to5Mac, so let's get started. Here's the big headline from Mark Gurman: the 15-inch MacBook Air with an M2-like chip has been spotted in developer logs. Now yes, he's saying that the M2 chip is more likely than the M3 in terms of which one the 15-inch MacBook Air is getting. Now I know that sounds like terrible news, but it means that the 15-inch model could be released sooner than later, as soon as WWDC, or maybe even earlier. And then on top of that, he also gave us a ton of other info detailing the 15-inch MacBook Air in his actual Bloomberg article, so let's run through the whole thing. As you can see right here, the next generation MacBook Air with a larger screen is in the works, and the new machine is on par with M2 Max, with M3 chips coming later. So that's a very interesting detail. The chip in the new 15-inch laptop has 8 main processing cores and 10 graphics cores, just like the current M2, including 8 gigs of memory in line with the existing MacBook Air, which makes it seem like it's gonna be the actual M2 chip. Now the main CPU is still gonna be split into 4 high-performance cores and 4 efficiency, but the interesting thing is that the Mac is testing using macOS 14, which is the future version that Apple's gonna show off at WWDC. Now, as far as the screen resolution for this laptop, it's gonna be codenamed the Mac 15,3, and it's gonna be equal to the 14-inch high-end MacBook Pro. And that means that the 15-inch larger Air would have the same resolution as the 14-inch Pro, but with slightly less sharpness or lower pixels per inch. So that is very interesting that they're doing that. And here's the kicker. He says that bigger changes to the Mac will be coming later with the release of an M3 chip, which will represent a transition to a 3nm production process from the current 5nm standard. And that's gonna give you improved performance and efficiency, which I've talked about before. Now this point right here is very interesting, specifically his wording. Beyond the larger MacBook Air, the company is working on an update to the 13-inch Air model, the 24-inch iMac, and the entry-level 13-inch MacBook Pro, which basically makes it seem like he's not expecting those products until later in the year, which I think it makes sense to launch with an M3 chip in either October or November, and I've been saying that for quite a while now in basically every single video that I've made. And he also gave some interesting points about the Mac Pro, which could be facing some delays, and the future 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros in the first half of 2024 with the higher end versions of the M3. Now, we did say that the 15-inch model in question was running macOS 14, but I don't believe that it means that it must come at WWDC. Why? Well, because macOS 14 isn't going to be fully released until the fall anyway, so what if the software is irrelevant to the launch and it could still come with macOS 13? But now let's get into the leaks from other leakers that solidify exactly what Mark Gurman is saying, and this is actually very interesting because there were some conflicting rumors with Ross Young at the head of them. Now, Ross Young, who is a display consultant, basically the best Apple leaker in terms of display leaks, he's got countless of them correct. He is saying that production of the 15-inch MacBook Air components is underway and a WWDC launch is looking likely. And he even said it could happen late April or early May. Even that soon, we could be seeing the 15-inch MacBook Air launch. Now, that is on top of previous rumors that he did in February when he said that the 15-inch MacBook Air would launch in April as display production has began. So what if later this month we might even see an M2 15-inch MacBook Air? And even before then, in March, he did say it's on track to launch in April. And finally, a different source, completely different, Digitime, said that the 15-inch MacBook Air would reportedly have an M2 chip. So all of it is coming together, and it all makes sense because if it does have an M2 chip, it can come as early as April, but if it has an M3, it's gotta be later. At least WWDC, in my opinion, the fall of this year. And finally, we had an earlier leak from Mark Gurman back in March saying that Apple was readying its next range of Macs, including finally a new iMac that would come at least later this year, maybe the spring of next year, but he said that Apple's gonna be launching about 3 new Macs between late spring and summer, those 3 models being the 15-inch Air, the first Mac Pro, and an update to the 13-inch MacBook Air. And then he also said that both the 13 and 15-inch are likely. However, he said that the chips in those models would be a big remaining question because he wasn't exactly sure. But in the new reports that he just did today, he did imply that the 13-inch MacBook Air with the M3 chip is gonna be coming later alongside other M3 Macs. And he also said that the Mac Pro is facing new delays, which could mean that it might not even show up at WWDC, or maybe it'll just be a reveal with a further launch date later this year. But what it means is that he expects the 15-inch MacBook Air to come first. That's for sure, and maybe even by itself, probably pointing to a WWDC launch or maybe even sooner. Now the final question is this: why would Apple release the 15-inch first with an M2 chip instead of waiting for the M3 chip so they can launch it alongside the 13-inch model? Well, I think it could be a business trick or a plan where they know that people are waiting for some new MacBooks because of all the rumors, especially with the hype surrounding a 15-inch model, which so many people are waiting on, so they can release the 15-inch first, make some profit on all of the orders, and then later they can come out with a banger M3 13-inch MacBook Air to get another big wave of orders. But the biggest thing you need to understand is that if the 15-inch comes with an M2 chip, it's not going to be upgraded to an M3 later this year alongside the 13-inch. And this actually makes sense for Apple to do because if they offer both a 15-inch display and an M3 chip in a MacBook Air, who in the world would buy the base 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M2 Pro chip? Nobody. Especially since I made a video predicting the performance of the M3 chip, and it's actually faster than the binned M2 Pro in the base 14-inch MacBook Pro. Now, the only other option that would be even worse is the possibility that Apple might bifurcate the M3 chip family according to 9to5Mac, which means making the regular M3 chip be based on Apple's A16 chip, which is basically 5nm, while the rest of the M3 chip family, like the M3 Pro, Max, and Ultra, will be based on 3nm next year. That would basically mean that Apple would release both the 13 and 15-inch MacBook Airs at WWDC with an M3 chip, but it won't be 3nm, which means it would suck, and it would basically be another stopgap chip product. But for Apple, it would solve the issue of the M3 being faster than the M2 Pro. And the reason 9to5Mac is saying that is because they had an exclusive leak back in March saying that both the 13 and 15-inch MacBook Air models will both use M3 chips. So if they're correct, either one of two things is happening. Either both the 13 and 15-inch are getting delayed until the fall, or the 15-inch will come first with an M3 chip, and if they're correct, then that means that both the 15 and 13-inch can come at the same time as early as WWDC with a 3nm chip built on 5nm, which would definitely suck. But Apple would be stalling even longer with these stopgap chips until finally giving us 3nm next year with the higher end models, and that way there's no cannibalizing going on at all. So you guys let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Click the circle button to subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.